So for about 15 years, we lived in this little suburb of Atlanta. It was a nice little, I guess you would call it a bedroom community, and not as really a small town necessarily, but it had the small town energy to it in a lot of ways. And that you would, it wasn't uncommon to run into somebody at the grocery store or the drugstore, that sort of thing. And my daughter was on was in Girl Scouts and swim team, and did a lot of activities. And so very often we would know somebody from different, we would know somebody from Girl Scouts and from church and from school, those sorts of things. It was that kind of community, right? Like a lot of communities in the U.S. and other places too. So this was maybe 15 or so, 13, 14 years ago, I guess. My daughter was on the swim team. She would have been in middle school, maybe. She was, I don't know, 9 or 10. And there was a girl on her swim team named Ellie, who was several years younger than my daughter. I think she was 6 and my daughter was 9, that kind of time frame, that kind of age difference. And she was this sweet little girl, and she was, could barely swim the length of the pool, but she was just cute as hell and had great attitude. And, my daughter wasn't really friends with her, but they went to our church. They went not to our church, but they went to they were also in Girl Scouts, but in a different troop, and so we had these other connections to them, and that's important. So one day, Ellie was at home with her two older brothers, and I think their dad was home with them. Mom was somewhere, working or something. And one of her next oldest brother, the middle kid, was playing with an air rifle, which he wasn't supposed to be playing with, a pellet gun, and was in an upstairs bedroom with the window open, shooting, I guess, cans or targets of some sort, down on the ground on the driveway or something. Wasn't supposed to be doing, so he's kind of sneaking. And so Ellie walked in, and so I'm doing that, and I can't remember his name. Said, "What are you doing?" And he, startled, turned around, and when he did, hit the trigger, and a pellet hit Ellie in the neck. And I'm not I don't know what hit, something important, and an artery or something, carotid artery, or I don't know, whatever. And just 1 in a million shot, and it just hit the one spot, and killed her. Yeah, and she she died right there in the floor in the entrance to the room, and they called 911, and the paramedics came, and they said even if the paramedics had been in the living room, she wouldn't have made it. It was just, she bled. There was so much blood, so fast. And to say that rocked our community is just a massive understatement. So a few days later, we saw posted on social media or something, where there's a funeral services or whatever day, and Ellie's favorite color was pink, so everybody, please wear pink. So went to this church where they were members, the family was members, and it was, you could barely get into the parking lot. This was a big church too, and went inside and found a spot. It was standing room only. It was. I'm not sure if everybody even got in. It was seriously, it was hundreds of people, maybe 1,000 people. And this minister gets up and he's talking, and he says, at some point, everything happens for a reason, even this tragedy. And I remember thinking, I felt this visceral reaction, and I thought, that's nonsense. This little girl didn't die. There's no reason for this sweet little girl to die. And that really stuck with me. And I've come to understand that thinking, that everything happens for a reason thinking, is very flawed. Here's the problem. Here's why it's a problem. It's egoic thinking. I talk about moving from an egoic existence to a spiritual existence. And this is, everything happens for a reason, is very egoic. It's trying to explain something that has no explanation. There is no good explanation for why this sweet girl died in the hallway of her house in the suburbs of Atlanta. There's no explanation for it. And trying to make sense of it and explain it is fucked. Because the God that I know, the divine that I am connected to, doesn't kill children. It's this egoic, this whole everything happens for a reason thinking is trying to take this wildly inexplicable, complex, emotional, sociological, just dumpster fire and put it in a nice little box and put a nice little ribbon on it. And it's offering comfort, which isn't all bad. But what that comfort does is pushes away the allowance for messiness. Because when a tragedy like this happens, it is all kinds of mess, all kinds of mess. So what's the alternative? Here's how I think. Instead of everything happens for a reason, I think this. Everything is as it should be. Those are different, very different. Let me explain. This is less of a belief and more of an allow. I'm allowing for things to be a way that I don't understand without trying to understand. The allowance piece is important. Missed your flight, everything is as it should be. The deal didn't work out, everything is as it should be. Got sick before your trip, everything is as it should be. One of the things I talk about with my entrepreneurial clients, my coaches and my consultants and my salespeople is when a prospect says no, even if it was seemed like a really good situation, somebody that they could help a lot, and the prospect says, you know what, I'm not going to do it, or I'm going to go a different way, or they disappear, or what. I always say, that's great news. And I mean it because of this. Everything is as it should be. If that prospect says no, that means you dodged a freaking bullet. Thank goodness they said no, because there was some like freaking dumpster fire in disguise that you just hadn't seen yet. Everything is as it should. So then the question is, what do we do when we find ourselves in like catastrophic sorts of circumstances, when a child dies, or when there's a natural disaster, or when there's something awful happens in the world, some government far or near does something terrible. What do we do? Well, you feel it. First of all, you let yourself feel it. You cry, you howl, you bury your face in your pillow and scream, shake your fist at the heavens, whatever you need to do. It's all good. Be angry if that's what you feel. Stomp your feet, express your anger, scream at the divine how pissed you are. By the way, it's okay to be angry at the divine. It can take it. If that's how you feel, that's how you feel. Resist the urge. There's always this urge to explain things or to understand things like this, to put it in a box, to wrap some religiosity, some religious context around it. God works in mysterious ways, or some nonsense, right? Which is very dismissive. It's a very dismissive response, by the way. So resist the urge to box it up, to quantify it, to understand it, to categorize it. Instead, let it be messy. Let it be ugly. Let it be what it is. Just a freaking... By the way, this also doesn't mean that you need to point blame. That's also helpful, right? It's funny. I'll watch these TV crime dramas, and something off, some person does something awful to some other person, and the victim's family is like, I want justice. And I always wonder, I've never had a catastrophe like that, like a violent crime happened in my family, thank goodness. Maybe knock on wood that I don't put that out in the universe, but I've never had anything like that happen. But I always wonder, if something like that happened, would the person who did it going to whatever, being facing justice, would that help? And I know from having served people in my therapy practice who've had those kinds of losses, it doesn't help. I mean, it's good to know that somebody, like a bad person that did a bad thing is not going to, is in a place where they can't do more bad things to other people. That's helpful. But there's not this, all right, now all's good. Like, there's not this closure that comes with that sort of thing, right? And that's the same thing that we're looking for with these like nonsensical, ununderstandable catastrophes, right? We want to blame somebody else. And if we know who did it and why they did it and what their motivation was, then we can be it. Doesn't work that. It's still going to hurt. So the work here is to allow yourself to be with this kind of thing in a way that's intrinsically powerful. In psychology, we talk about an internal versus an external locus of control, trying to move the locus of control internally, inside me, so that I decide how I want to be with this situation, rather than trying to control what it means and what it's about and who did what and why they did it and all those things, why it happened, what's God's role in this, and like trying to understand. all that is very, very much external locus of control. And it's a very disempowering way to feel. And also there's this like if this thing happened, this is the person who's to blame, this is why they did it, and this is the outcome, and you can kind of like write it down. Like if you can write it into a 60-minute crime drama, right, and wrap everything up with a bow, then it's not messy. It's not complex. The reality of anything like is that it is complex. So allowing for the messiness and allowing for the complexity is very empowering. There's this parable that you might have heard. I'll give you the brief version of it. And this farmer has a fence broken, and his horse gets out and runs away. And his neighbor says, "Oh, that's too bad." And the farmer says, "Well, we'll see." The next day, the horse comes back and brings 2 other horses with it into the pen. His neighbor says, "That's great." And the farmer says, "Oh, we'll see." So his son gets on one of the new horses to try to ride it, and it throws him off and he breaks his leg. And the neighbor says, "Oh, that's really too bad." The farmer says, "We'll see." The next day, the army comes through and says, "We're going to war, and we're like taking all the young men." And of course, the young man with the broken leg can't go. And the farmer says, "That's great." Or the neighbor says, "Oh, that's really good news." The farmer says, We'll see." Right? And the point of all that parable is that we don't really, when we're in a situation, bad or good, we don't really know if it's, "Oh, that's too bad," or "Wow, that's really great." We don't have enough context. We don't have enough distance. We don't have enough height to give us perspective, right? We probably all know that person who got fired from their job and was like, "Oh, this is a catastrophe," and like a month later they get the job, right? Or some version of that story, right? Like the fact that they got fired and they got fired on that day and that way, like none of the circumstances changed with the fire. But now 4 weeks later, it's a different answer, a different response, right? What I'm getting at is that we can choose to have those different responses. We can choose to hold all of this data much lighter. We can choose to hold it in a way that doesn't put us in angst, where we don't put ourselves in angst. That's an option. That's available to us. It's like if I gave you a piece of charcoal from the grill, a fresh piece, not a hot piece, I would never do that to you. If I gave you a piece of charcoal and you held it in your hand and you held it like this and did it like this and hold it and moved it around, your hands would be covered with charcoal dust. If you just held your hand flat out and let it sit there, your hand wouldn't get as dirty. Same piece of charcoal, same hands, but you're doing something different with it. And you have a different outcome. That's all I'm saying. So there's a deeper piece to all this, though, that I want to get at. And how do I want to say? There's when we're in this place of trying to explain a tragedy or trying to decide like this is the best thing that ever happened, or when we're trying to do all that stuff, when we're trying to categorize, when we're trying to package, when we're trying to put a nice bow on everything, we're doing something really dangerous. Dangerous in the way that it's not good for us is what I'm saying. What's really going on is we're trying to play a role for which we are not qualified. Outcomes, we're in the outcome business, right? We're trying to create and manufacture outcomes. And the fact is, the outcome, the divine, is in the outcome. So you and I need to stay in the execution business, in the effort business, right? Because we're not qualified to manage out. Like I said, we don't have enough context. There's a spiritual context here where the divine does have that. So this is a matter of trusting in the divine and saying, I trust that I don't have enough information yet. I'm still gonna feel whatever I feel the excitement of a good thing, or feel the pain of a bad thing. Quote good thing, quote bad. And I'd even go so far as to say, like, taking the words good and bad out of our vocabulary. It's a little bit extreme, I know, but that's what I'm getting at, right? I mean, you have a tasty dinner and like, oh, that tastes good. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about on the more existential level, more life level. This thing happened to me today. Oh, was it good or bad? I don't know. We'll see. It's just a thing. It's just data. It's just information, right? And when we can hold it that way and we can just sort of create this more calm center, and then we still honor our emotions. If we feel excited, we feel excited. If we feel happy and joyful and grateful, awesome. If we feel sad and rejected and unheard and whatever, that's fine too. We feel all those things. But we just have an honest emotional reaction without trying to control and fix and package everything. See, the binary construct of good and bad is a symptom of a small context. The binary construct of good and bad is a symptom of a small context. When I zoom out and allow myself to have a bigger context, I can see that those things, which comes with time, I can see that those things in my life that I thought were good and those things that I thought were bad, sometimes I was right and sometimes I wasn't. So no, everything doesn't happen for a reason. And yes, all is as it should be. If you're watching this video, this is exactly what's supposed to happen. If you got bored with me a few minutes ago and clicked off of it, that was what was supposed to happen too. It's all good. And I'm open to all realities. I invite you to be too, because all is as it should be.